Sword Saint Magus starting build. Magus is the hardest class to play and master in Pathfinder. They cast spells or buff their melee attacks with their arcane pool of magic energy. This subclass is a Magus focused on a single weapon of choice. Pick one weapon and you stick with it for your entire life. You will play with simple, light, one-handed weapon in one hand and your other hand will be reserved for casting spells. A bit funny, but that's how it is. So, you are proficient with light and simple weapons and with light and medium armor. Later on, you will receive heavy armor too. On top of all of this, you will also be able to cast 0-level spells, or better to say, cantrips. For the Sword Saint subclass, most of his spells that this subclass will receive are oriented into melee combat, and that's the only difference from this subclass with other Magus subclasses. This is like full freaking melee. Choosing race, we are searching for high dexterity and intelligence. Human, elf, halfling, half-elf, half-orc, tieflings and Dhampirs all apply for the role here. Background selection: Nomad Wanderer, Regional Diplomat, Nexian Scholar, Historian, Cadrian Wanderer in Regional, Varisian Explorer, Daredevil, Sheckless Corsair, and Linorm Kings all apply for the role. For this subclass, we're gonna pick Daredevil because of free mobility. Allocating ability points. Full risk, full reward would be 7, 18, 13, 20, 7, and 7. Reason is very simple. This is one of the most offensive classes in the game. You want to burst as fast as you can. How you do it? With risking attribute points. How you do it in game? You apply all possible buffs. You trigger melee touch with spell, or better to say, you prepare a melee attack, then you open up with a long range spell into a freaking melee attack for a maximum amount of burst damage. So it's spell into attack. Those that don't like to risk, just reduce intelligence to 18 and put 7s on 10s. Those that don't like to risk at all, we can go with 13, 16, 13, 20, 7 and 7. And that would be the safest route. Even further reduction for playing safe. I would always go for a high risk, suffer a bit in the beginning of the game, and once you start acquiring items and scaling with levels, that early risk will pay off at least 3 times more than when going with safe route. Allocating skill points. It's simple here, we just take all that's green. Athletics, Mobility, Arcana, World, Persuasion, and use Magic Device. Feats. For our Sword Saint here, a no-brain is Weapon Finesse. For our second feat, we can take Spell Focus into Evocation. And what's specific to this class is a chosen weapon. I already said what marks Sword Saint as specific class. It's the weapon of choice. Now we need to pick specific weapon. We're gonna pick Rapier. Have in mind that Fencing Grace Rapier is great to take on leveling. This feat is absolutely great on the Magus. What's also valid with Rapier? Just so you know, you got options, you don't need to play with Rapier like I made it here, right? You can go with Elven Curve Blade, you can go with an S-Tuck, alright? You can go with plenty of weapons as long as they remain simple, light weapons. Simple weapons to consider are short spear, long spear, light mace, sickle, dagger, and so on. If you take martial weapon proficiencies in your feats, then all weapons will apply except exotics and vice versa. But then you don't need weapon finesse because you're gonna go with a strength-based Magus, alright? You're gonna distribute equally points between strength and dexterity here, and then you don't need weapon finesse, and then you can play with some other martial weapons, alright? We're gonna stick with high dexterity, high intelligence, weapon finesse, evocation into Rapier for this build. Choosing spells now. Burning Hands for some AoE damage, Expeditious Retreat to run faster, Flare Burst for some light, Magic Missiles as the best spell that you can take early on, Magic Weapon to deal more damage, Shield for some defense, True Strike so you can actually hit someone, Vanish so you can actually sneak in the first few levels. After that, this spell becomes completely useless. Choosing Deity. Deities that count would be Calistria, Kaiden Salian, Lamatsu, Norgober, Saran, Rhea. They're all valid options here. I mean, all deities are valid. I just said the best ones. We're gonna pick Calistria because of Rapier, and the alignment is completely your choice. Pick what you like the most. At one point in the game you will receive your most important upgrades on every 3 levels or so. It depends on a subclass. Some of them receive on 3 levels, some of them on 4, some of them on 10. It really depends on the subclass. But you will have 1 million options here when you receive Magus Arcana. Good ones to take are Arcane Accuracy, Dimension Strike, Empowered Magic, Enduring Blade, Extend Magic, and Hasted Assault. If you decided to follow my advice and take a full risk with 20 intelligence and high dexterity, then Hasted Assault will scale like crazy in the early game and onwards. Take Hasted Assault first. Other races now as Sword Saint Magus for Elf, Half-Elf, Halfling, and Half-Orc. We're gonna stick with base versions and we're gonna copy the entire human build. For Tieflings, we can go with base version or Tiefling, or we can go with a Grimspawn. After that, we're gonna copy the entire human build. For Dhampirs, the only valid option would be Vetala-born Ajibachana, and after that we copy the entire human build. Kitsunes, only Kin Kitsune is valid, and after that we copy the entire human build.